Okay, so last video there was some question about what my actual workflow is and why I like doing it this way better. So let me show you. I'm actually about to start a new project where I want to look at iron tournament batters. I want to look at their rates and their stats with hopes that we could actually apply some machine learning and get do some predicting with this data. So here's my workflow. I'm in out of the park baseball here. I go to my traditional tournaments. I go to my tournaments and I sort by the specific type of tournament I want to look at so that all the data is coming from a similar tournament and I can limit some of my variables. So I scroll down here and let's say I'm looking at the Ace Iron tournaments, so the best of seven, and I want to look at tournament 568. I know this tournament is done. I've grabbed data from it before, so I'm going to hit examine. Once it brings it up, I'm going to go right to the tournament statistics. So I'm going to go tournament statistics, and I want to go to the sortable stats. Now, I've made myself a custom view. So I was working with this before. The problem with batting stats 1 is it puts in a lot of these stats that are average stats, which don't really work if you want to look at a lot of different tournaments because the weight gets shifted based on how many innings they saw in this tournament versus another tournament, how many times that player was used in this tournament versus another tournament. So I limited myself to ratings and the counting stats, just stats that would normally count up anyway, and ratings and a little bit of information about each player. This is really messy, but that's okay because I'm dealing with all of this in Python and machine learning and on Google Colab. So it doesn't really have to be clean. For me, the computer needs to just know what things are. So when I have my report ready, I hit report and I hit write on disk. You don't have to hit write on disk if you're worried about space or anything like that. Once this web page pops up with all this information, all I do is right click and click save as. And then I like two pieces of information. I like to know what tournament it was, 568 in this case, and then what kind of page it was. In this case, this is batter rate stats. I'm going to call these because it has the ratings in it too. And I want to make sure I'm saving the web page HTML only. The complete won't help you. The HTML only is the easiest way to go. And it's going to save to my desktop, which is actually going to allow me to trash it as soon as I get it uploaded to Google Docs, Google Drive, which is where I want it. So you'll see it pops up down here. I go back over to my folder on Google Drive, and I kind of just drag it up here. Okay. Once I have a few of these, so let me get one more. I'll go through the process one more time. I'll actually pause you so you don't have to watch it and just get a little bit more data, and I'll show you what I do. I'll show you my workflow from there. Okay, now I've got 3 sets of stats here. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go to Google Colab. And Google Colab is a machine learning data analysis environment that's really good for doing this kind of analysis. I'm actually going to hit cancel here because I'm logged in under the wrong person. So let me fix that. Okay, and here you can see I've got some notebooks, but I'm going to actually start a new notebook in this case. And it's going to be called Iron Batters Ratings Stats. So the idea of this notebook is particularly to look at both the ratings and the statistics and see if we can't do some not only analysis, but maybe even actually run machine learning on it. I won't go into all of that, but let me just show you basically how I set up in case you didn't see my last video, how I set up my my file here. So I'm going to go ahead and import some basic libraries for doing data analysis like NumPy and pandas. As we do machine learning and that kind of thing, we're going to need more libraries, but those are the 3 basic ones right now. This one just allows us to get access to the file system. Run that. We're all good there. I want to add another line of code. So now I want to go get all those tables. So I'm going to go ahead and make a blank array, and then I'm going to say for file name in os.list the directory. And this takes a string, and for me, in mine, it's going to be content /content /drive / my drive / iron batters rates stats, I think. I'm not sure. What I can do now is I can just say print file name, and I'll get a bunch of file names if it is there, and if I've made a mistake on the name here, I won't get anything. I got it right, so there we go. So now I just say set some variable table equal to the results of Panda library reading the HTML, basically looking for tables inside these HTML. One of the things I should do, and I do like to do, is actually set up a folder. Once I have the right folder, set up a folder string up here so I can just reference that instead of retyping that every time. And now down here I can just write, instead of writing that, I can just write folder. Now in here I'm going to say, okay, I want actually not only the folder, so I'm going to do what's called an F string. I not only want the folder, okay, these curly brackets mean grab the variable folder and put it in here, but I also want the file name. Spell things right. All right, and that's going to create a table based on that, and I'm just going to go ahead and add that to my array of tables. So now if I've done this right, I should get 3 tables out of this. And I've made a mistake. Folder. Oh, I have to rerun that cell once I define folder up there. Okay, it's going to go through and it should pull out 3 tables. Now actually the value of 3 tables is important. So I'm actually going to store that as a variable here because I'm going to want it later, because one of the things we're going to do is we're going to sum up all the things in these tables, but that's going to sum up my ratings too, which is fine. I don't have to worry about weighting or anything with the ratings. I just have to keep track of how many tables I'm doing so that I can divide by that number and get my ratings back to where they should be. So I'm going to say num, I should do this in a Python way, num of tables equals length tables. Okay, so now that we have our tables all set up, now I want to set up my what are called my data frames. So I'm going to make a variable again called data frames, and it's a list of data frames. And I'm going to say for table inside of that list of tables, I want to basically say make a new data frame just from the second piece of tables. So each table has 3 pieces, and I want the second piece 0, 1, 2 is how they're indexed. And then I'm just going to say dfs.append that data frame to that list of data frames. And then just to quickly check one more time, I'm going to go ahead and print the length of DFS. And if this works right, I should still get 3. Good. Okay, so now we have DFS set up. We need to put all of our data frames. So if I showed you what DFS looks like right now, let me just go ahead and print that out. You'll see I've got these 3 separate data frames here, or tables. In pandas, they're called data frames, right? And I don't want 3 separate data frames. I want them all together. So now I'm going to say, okay, data frame, we're going to reuse the data frame variable. And we're going to say that's equal to, using the pandas library, we're going to do something called concat, which basically means squish together. Concat all of the data frames. And now if we print out just data frame, it's going to be all those data frames, but kind of stuck together in a clean table. And you'll see we have 1,204 rows. Perfect. Okay. So now we've got our one data frame that we can work with. I'm going to run that cell again to get rid of that. I'm going to add another line of code. Now we can start working with that one data frame. And the first thing I want to do is I want to sort of sum up everything in that data frame. So I'm going to make a new variable called dfSum, and that's going to be equal to df, and we're going to group it by meaning we're going to group all of the instances of each thing we see by. Basically, we want to group them by their name, and we're going to run a sum on it. Now, for most of our stats, this is going to work fine because I want to know all of the hits in all of the tournaments that they got. I want to know those. And we didn't, in my export, I didn't take things like batting average and that because those values don't make sense when summed. Where we're going to have problems is our ratings are also going to sum. So if a guy is 44 in, contact or whatever, then he's going to end up with 3 times that amount in our last data frame. So we're going to have to sort of work through that and make sure that all of our ratings get divided by 3 in the end. All right, so let's just see. Let me show you what just this looks like. So df sum, now that we've done it group by. And now you notice I don't have repeats, right? I've got everybody once, and they're pretty much in alphabetical order by their first name. And you'll see my ratings, like overall rating, Adam LaRoche has a 290 overall rating. Right, not that useful. Actually, I'm just realizing an issue. Okay, so interestingly, because Abraham Nunez is not in all of these data frames up here, he doesn't appear 3 times. He actually probably only appears once based on what I'm seeing here. So how many tables is not going to be as valuable. What we're going to want to know is basically how many times each person appears. Okay, so a way we can do that is let's see, df. I'm gonna have to think about that one. Okay, quick fix to our problem and an interesting result actually. So I was right. Abraham Nunez only had appeared once, and so what I did was I basically set up a new column called counts, and I counted the size of each group of the data frame by name. So, but Adam LaRoche, I was thinking, 3 tournaments, he's going to appear 3 times. No, he appears 5 times because he appeared multiple times in multiple tournaments. So we're going to need those counts again to sort of reset all of our rating stats. But at least here we are now with a data frame that sums up all of their runs, base on balls, hits, and what we can start to do at very least is sort the values by things like, okay, let's see. And actually, first I'm going to drop this unnamed 0 piece. So let's go ahead and say drop. You have to put this in an array in a list like this. Unnamed :space 0, and that's on axis 1. Just means basically I want it to be a column, and I'm going to say go ahead and do it in place equals true. Oh, and I forgot to reprint it. That's fine. So now df sum sort value, and let's go ahead and sort by runs. Okay, so here's our frame sorted by their runs. And one of the things you'll notice right off the bat is it starts with 0 runs, and we're dealing with people who really didn't appear very often. Their counts are low. I'm guessing their innings, their at-bats are low, that kind of thing. So a few things we can do. One, let's change our sort so that it is not ascending but descending, so we get larger numbers first. And then let's go ahead and we can filter these too. So we're going to filter by df sum, where the at-bats, say, are greater than 20. Okay. So we see some familiar names right up here at the top, and now we're getting some things that start to make sense. Okay, so in terms of runs, these are the players that have the most runs. These are the players that have the least. And I'm not that interested in players that have the least in these 3 tournaments. So I'm going to do one more change here. I'm going to say dot head. I'm going to say give me the top 50 players. So dot head means give me the top and don't worry about the bottom. So these are the top 50 players in terms of runs. Now, like I said, we have to. I'll go through this maybe in another video, but I'm going to now use the counts over here to start editing the ratings, and then hopefully maybe apply some machine learning to this process and see what we can start to predict. All right, I hope that was helpful.